recording on. Thank you, computer lady. All right. We are going to be ready then in five, four, three, two, and one. Welcome, pudding people, to another episode of Everybody Loves Pudding. I'm your host, Ken Seymour. Today, I have a fantastic guest with me, actress, model, writer. She has her fingers in a lot of very interesting pies. We have the fantastic Nicole Arlyn.
Hi everybody.
I am ecstatic to have you with us because you've been to among other things a very prestigious school that I've always had questions about. I haven't had a guest that's been to this particular school before, and my imagination is kind of swirling because whenever you're in high school and you think about places to go, this is one of those things that's kind of like Cambridge or something like that. And I had to ask, you attended the Sorbonne. What was that like?
Oh, that was amazing. That was beautiful. I was in an American program, but I ended up staying in Paris a lot longer than that was. And I studied art history, French, and I just loved being in Paris. And I actually made a film there with a pretty well-known director. And I got to film in the Palace of Versailles and I've always been a traveler. So going to school there was like a dream I had as a child in French class in elementary school or middle school, whenever it was.
And that
So
was an experimental film, right? What does it mean when they say this film is an experimental film? Does that mean that they're going to have you playing with beakers and stuff in the process?
it means, well, it could be, but usually there's not like a set script. Like Godard and Truffaut, and they all did very experimental films. They just had like a treatment, and then they would let the actor go based on just the idea. So those are more the experimental films, I think, where there's no limit on it.
That can make things interesting. Now this was before you really got kind of into the whole acting thing. This was early. How did it feel to did he just the director just kind of come up to you one day? It's like, you'd be perfect for this, or was this something that you pursued?
No, I was sitting in the fountain in Leal, and I was just a student there. And this director came over to me and said, "Would you be willing to do a film?" I was a photographer, and so that kind of was. I just remember playing on a lot of statues in the Palace of Versailles in the gardens, and talking to statues and having to do kind of mime stuff with statues. And it was very bizarre, but I was so open to it, especially traveling and leaving your country into a foreign world. You're just very creative innately, I think. So that triggered a lot of me wanting to make films.
The experience in the Sorbonne, you said it was an English program. Does that mean that you were going over there because you could teach English, or because that you were just part of a segment of English students? Like, we allow 7 people per year to come to the Sorbonne, and you're one of those 7. What did that really mean?
It was an American program. It was, they took some American students to go over there. Basically, that's what it was.
How did you come into that? Because I just have this imagination, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You get the golden ticket and you manage to go to
Yeah,
this magical place.
it was a golden ticket. It was just a program that they took American students to study there, mostly art history.
Ah,
And so I got into that. I was at Ohio State at the time, and I felt that the university was too big for me. I already knew what I wanted to do, something with acting and films or art or poetry. And I applied and got in at that time.
hmm. Now, acting is kind of a funny business. You can come at it from a lot of different directions. You can grow up in the industry. You can just realize one day that, hey, this is what I want to do. You can train into it. But a lot of times it's one of those things where it's really useful to have the right people to point you in the right direction. Now, you have said in the past that Susan Batson is a real kind of mentor to you and has kind of put you on the path to be where you need to be. What is it about her and the way that she does things that has had such a profound influence on you?
Oh my God, she changed my life as an actress. She gave me um, the permission to explore the depths of your entire soul and spirit, like the pulling out from secret places. She teaches about the need of the actor, things that were maybe shut down in our childhood, things we could not express that are still in us somewhere. She gave me the permission to open those treasure chests and allow those needs of the child in us to be exposed in acting. And in fact, that's what makes you the best actor, is not is allowing those parts of ourselves that we can't use in life. That's why I loved always being an actress, because I found out that that's the very place that it's like the opposite of life. Like in life, we have to always put a cap down on our feelings, emotions, questions, needs, and desires. And then in acting, if you don't use those things, you're probably not a good actor. So it's just the depths that I was always after, even as a child through writing, that Susan, I had studied with a lot of great teachers prior to her, but there was just, that was it. Like she was like my mom, or just a family connection where, you know, you can do this, go more. You can be crazy and disgusting and horrible and real and truthful, and the permission to do those things in the art form of acting was it's just the most freeing place in the world.
So can you give me an example when you're going through this process, this um, transformative thing where you're trying to become a better muse, I guess, for the lack of a better word, to be able to become the person that you want to be in any specific situation. Can you give me an example of one of her processes that really kind of touched you? That was something that where it like kind of clicked. And it's like, oh, this is something I maybe never thought of.
Well, before we do any work on scenes, we have to go into our life personally. Um, so it's almost like memories of things that hurt. I know that sounds really like, whoa, but that memories of times where you were like, we'll just sit on a chair and remember things. Um, the time your father left, or the time where somebody told you no to something that was really important to you. And it's like, it's kind of a sense memory like Strasberg used, or the Actors Studio, but even more so, it's even more permissive in a sense, less controlled maybe. It's just opening those parts of ourself up. Was that even the question? I could talk about acting for like 1,000 years. So I don't even remember your question.
Well, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. That's the fun thing about this. It's that if
Yeah,
you had a moment when she was maybe teaching something that connected with you that you had not thought
yeah,
of previously.
I do remember that moment. I had done a one woman show about the Italian actress Anna Magnani, and Susan was directing it and directing me in it. The reason why that happened, just really fast, was because upon meeting Susan, she asked me, what kind of acting do you want to do? And I said, I want to do the kind of acting that the great Anna Magnani did in the Italian films, because she's the most authentic of all the actresses I've ever seen, just raw and, you know, real courage. And so she said, great, you're going to do a one woman show about Anna Magnani. I was like, oh my God, I got myself into a lot of trouble right now. So I had to learn Italian, do this show. But there was one time where I was on stage. She had these Sunday class workshops for actors. I think it was called the Dream Workshops. And I was on stage, and it was like I was almost at the bottom of the character. And she just I wasn't quite there yet. And I remember her yelling at me, like, you know, you don't think you're good enough. You think you can't do this. You've got it all inside of you. Why aren't you working more? You should let this stuff. And she was yelling so much. And I just remember her like just popping something inside of me that was, and I did something on stage in that moment where she yelled at me, "You're not a piece of,
Right.
you're garbage. You're good at this," or whatever. And then I did something on stage that was so painful that the audience was like, I remember kind of glancing at the audience. They were like, "Oh my God, I can't watch her. It's too much. It's too intense." And she went to a place that's very scary internally. So those are the things like Susan won't let you just stay here. It's what's under the ocean, what's under the sea. And that's why she evokes such Academy Award winning performances from the people that she coaches.
There's also something you mentioned, glancing out at the audience, that there's something a little more connective about a live performance than something that you can get through television or movies. Do you have a preference? Do you prefer that kind of live connection, or do you prefer the abilities like, I want to be able to take 100 takes and I want to get this exactly the way that I want it to be before it's seen by anybody?
That's a really good question. I don't like doing 100 takes. I know Al Pacino does. I'm somewhere in between but I prefer film. I prefer the intimacy of film. I prefer the quietness, sometimes not a lot of dialogue. I actually prefer because it's just the emotional moments where the camera can pick all of that up and really get inside the person. Theater is so big and so physical. It's like being a grand athlete. And then oftentimes, like after that show that I did, you really have to rest because you can lose your voice and like, it's just so much heightened energy. And I just love the camera and filmmaking. I love the intimacy of it much more.
Do you tend to involve yourself in the procedural and technical aspects, or you tend to kind of keep yourself to the acting side of things?
Completely keep myself to the acting side of things.
I know
I,
sometimes I hear some people say it's like, I really would like, please place the camera this way. I want this kind of a film, the lighting, even they're thinking about every single item. You prefer to be more like, I want to be the person. I want to be in the moment.
I want to be in the moment and very focused. I don't like multitasking or thinking about what I have to do in a scene. And a lot of actors can talk to someone and then go right into the scene. I'm not made like that at all. I really enjoy sitting in the character, maybe listening to music about the character or getting into that place. It's very hard for me to shift in and out of that place. That's just how I'm made. Every actor is different. But I don't want to deal with any technical aspects. I want to deal with the other actor that I'm working with only, really. I have a directing bug. I'm also a writer, so I've got all that in me, but that would be like a separate thing. I don't want to take on too many hats in the same moment. I just prefer living in it, like old school method.
I can
But
understand that. That
yeah,
yeah, definitely for sure. I feel like, I've had a limited experience of acting myself, and I had always thought it's like I don't get the whole acting and directing thing. I wouldn't be able to separate myself out into that other role to go. It's like, can I really look at the performance that I'm doing from a different perspective while I'm doing the performance? It just, I don't get it. But there's so many people that can somehow make it work.
yeah, exactly. I know Mel Gibson is like the best at that, but I don't know how he did that.
When you're looking for projects and you're trying to find that next big thing that you want to do, what are the things that kind of key you in, the things that go, oh, this is something that I would find really interesting?
Well, I think just probably roles that roles that have something to say, roles that go to interesting places. I like the mother roles. I like the wife role. I like. I mean, I don't think there's anything I wouldn't like, but something with some depth to it and an arc and changes and very thoughtful, or a fighter, or something where you have something to say as an artist in the film. You're not just you want to express a character
Right. You're not almost part
going
of
through
the
something.
scenery. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to express somebody that's going through something, give a life, and breath into a person, a character that has something to fight for. That's it. What I just said, playing somebody with something to fight for
Right.
or overcome.
And a lot of times, your own personal life experiences can kind of play into that. And you've managed to accrue some very interesting life experiences. I have this whole mess of questions about one very specific facet of your past that I was looking at, and I'm super curious because I don't think I've talked to anybody that's done this, but it says that at one point you were in a pageant, and that whole thing, the closest that I've gotten is well, watching, was it the Miss Congeniality films, seeing the pageant through that specific lens. But what was being part of? Were you in multiple, or were you just in kind of one big pageant?
I
One.
was in one big pageant and I came in first runner up. And I was that was a very interesting experience. Um, I had trained in dance actually for this pageant for quite a long time, and I was doing a performance from the Broadway show Cats, and I was in the costume, and that was my talent at the time, because I don't think that we were allowed to do something with acting. I think it had to be singing or dancing, and at the time of the pageant, I was so terribly nervous that I completely forgot the dance after like 6 months of training for it. And it was such a mess, but it was so funny because I just made it up as I went along. And for some reason, I came in first runner up. And it was, there were judges outside sitting at the front of the stage, and I wasn't supposed to, but I took the dance onto their judging tables. And I was throwing their papers up in the air. It was just some kind of like stage fright took over. I was throwing their whatever their scores were up in the air, and I was dancing in front of their face, and the entire audience was cracking up. So that's why they gave that to me. But I don't think I'll do a pageant again.
Well, I have to imagine it's almost like the opposite of acting, in which there's a very, very, very core and very, very strong set of rules and guidelines that you have to follow by. And it's less about being you or being somebody else. It's like, we want you to be this very specifically. What was it that I'm trying to wrap my head. When you start into this whole process, you decide, okay, I'm going to do this pageant. You get accepted as one of the contestants. And what is the first thing they have you do? Is there like just like a bunch of paperwork you have to sign? It's like, you will not say anything about this. What is that process like?
Um, I don't remember the initial. I was chosen somehow. There was a vote. There was some kind of vote, and then I don't remember the initial, paperwork or anything about that. The main thing I remember, because I was so young, but I remember my mother taking me for the pageant dress in a little shop on Long Island. And I remember just trying on a bunch of dresses and gowns. And it was a beautiful connecting moment with my mom, because my mom loves fashion and glamour and getting dressed up. And my mom loves shopping. So I remember that gown. It was black and white sequins, and that's the part I remember of it from it.
I like that. To be able to find a positive emotional just moment out of something that in my mind it'd just be a soup of nerves and and,
Yeah.
and all that. That would be kind of crazy. So okay, so I'm going to ask this. I always ask this whenever I know you say that you prefer film and over theater, being able to do it that way. That means that you're going to have this. You've already said, talked about an actress that inspired you early. What are some of the films that just kind of helped cement the love of acting and the love of the industry in you when you were younger?
Okay, I'm going to be completely cliche. I'm not the only one, but it's absolutely Al Pacino. I know I'm like part of a million, thousand, trillion people that say that, but I do remember seeing Dog Day Afternoon when I was little. I think my dad took me on the Kings Parkway in Brooklyn to see it. And I didn't grow up with my dad, but he did take me to see that film when I saw him sometimes. And I I remember seeing Pacino and somehow knowing that he was acting, like that was something you could do. That was something that you could learn and become a career for. I would never was looking or seeing films. My son's the same way now. Like I never watched it for entertainment, or there was always that I was behind the scenes of it, always watching, like where the cameras are, how did he get those moments, how does he be so intense, and like that was it was just Pacino, his face on the big screen, and saying I would love to be the female Al Pacino. That I remember saying to somebody. And it's very cliche, but it's true. Like seeing great actors in film as a child, and you're like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. So it was definitely him. I can't really remember any other thing.
Well, it makes sense to me. There's a reason that the greats are the greats. I mean, Pacino's
Yeah.
done so many good things. He can even take a film that would sometimes be just like cheesy and campy, and even if he goes over the top, he's just fantastic. I mean, just his rant as Lucifer, opposite Keanu Reeves. That every time that final speech towards the end of the film, it's like, all right, yeah, that the rest of the film without that doesn't work. And it
Right.
just this kind of just amazes me every time I see it. It's like, yeah, I get that 100%. Now, when you went into some of the earlier films that you had, did you get starstruck when you kind of were able to work with some of these I don't want to say titans, but these extraordinarily talented individuals that you're with? I mean, just looking back at like Frogs and Snakes. I
Yeah,
mean, the cast on that was crazy. I
that's
mean,
crazy.
uh,
Yeah,
what was that like?
that was amazing because I got to work with Barbara Hershey, and
Right,
that was insane. That was nuts. That was amazing. I remember even being in the makeup chair with her, and the director was Amos Poe, who's still a very good friend of mine. And I got that role as a tomboy who wanted to be an actress. And I remember being in the makeup chair, and they were putting actual sideburns on me. It was a weird character. They put Amos put his hat on me and these sideburns, but I was in a wife beater, and I'm built like a lady. And
right.
Barbara she was like, how's this gonna work? Like at the time it was like, she's like, are you sure she needs those sideburns? Are you like, something's not matching up here with the character? And Amos is like, don't worry, she's gonna lower her voice, and it's gonna be just this twist, this girl who she doesn't know who she is. She just wants to be an actress, and she's working at a gas station, and she knows a lot of monologues. and she's never really going to be an actress because she stinks. But so that was my character, and it was amazing to work with Barbara Hershey. And of course, when you're in the scene, and she was laughing a lot at me, so that was amazing.
Just looking at that, she's just a legend in and of herself. But I mean, got Robbie Coltrane in there. Rest his soul, that we lost not too long ago. He was always amazing in anything that I saw him in. And you got the master of voices in DiMaggio that was in that as well. And uh,
John Leguizamo.
John, yeah,
Debbie,
exactly. He seems like he'd be super intense. Is he intense when he's on the set with you?
he's funny. He's absolutely, actors are just a lot of, I think most actors are maybe similar to what they are in script. Like, there's a lot of love in actors. You have to have a lot of love in you, just in life, to
Yeah.
even want to do it, to even want to be there on set. And
What
yeah,
was,
you have to,
what was your favorite scene that you did in that film? Is there a specific aspect of the production of that film that just kind of still has a special place in your heart today?
well, it's a scene in the gas
Oh,
station. It was the scene when I'm pumping gas, and I wasn't actually pumping gas. That was like, I remember I had trouble with I couldn't get the I couldn't get the how you have to put the nozzle in the gas, but there was no, it was on the side of the car where that wasn't. And I remember I couldn't even coordinate myself to put that in and say the monologue and look at Barbara Hershey. And I remember that scene.
that's a lot of fun. Um, well, and here's the other thing: you go from that, and obviously, the sequence that they come out in theaters isn't necessarily the sequence that they're recorded in. But
Right.
when I look at the sequence of when that came out, and then just like right after that, you've got Clay Pigeons,
Yeah.
just another kind of star-studded killer cast kind of production.
Yeah.
How did you get? I feel like with the way that my psyche works, if I were in your position at that point, it's like I was in this film and I worked with these legends and these awesome people, and then I'm in another one with all these legends. Like, oh, I'm a legend now. How do you keep your keep your mind clear and not go to that place where you might think too much?
Oh my God, that was really amazing. I mean, that was amazing how I got that role. That was amazing being on set with David Dobkin and Joaquin Phoenix, who is extraordinary and a truly deep, deep actor that really, I learned a lot working with him, even though I don't have the biggest role in that movie, but I just learned a lot. Like, he wanted to discuss the relationship of our characters. That was really fascinating to me. Um, it was one of the greatest film experiences of my life, for sure.
I've heard that he really just kind of buries himself into the
Oh
role.
yeah. Oh my God. Like, he was punching the wall in that scene. He was really punching the wall. It was that was that was amazing. I have so much to say. I can't even collect my thoughts about it, but because I was so young and I hadn't done that much before that. And then when I got to the set, I remember, a lot of actors, you start out like, what am I doing here? How did I get here? Are you sure they hire the right person? What the heck am I doing working with these people? Like, I only did these smaller things. Oh my God, I'm going to mess up my lines. I'm not going to get the beat right. I'm going to screw up the scene. It was all of that in the back of my mind, like the whole filming. So, but it was a blast. It was amazing.
So, okay, so this is the question that comes to me, the first one that comes to me, just specifically talking about the method that Joaquin Phoenix uses, and he had the discussion with you about the relationship. How do you get onto the same page when the person that you're working with is trying to be at a certain level of realness, how do you prepare yourself? How did you get yourself to get to that same level? Was it like a collaborative thing, or was there something else that you were able to use to kind of do that?
With working with Joaquin, it was completely connecting. It was connecting with him. Um, I had gone through a lot of acting trainings and stuff, but that doesn't really prepare you. I think I think acting is connecting. I think it's making that connection. It's listening. It's who am I to this person? He, we talked about that, like how long this couple was together, even though we didn't share a tremendous screen time. It was how do I connect with him so it comes off real on film? I think you have to I think the best thing is to connect in life and in the characters. So it's like maybe making a friend, or what's our history together? Listening and answering, connecting, those are the most important things with acting. And that film too, I got from making a lot of mistakes. It seems like making mistakes has been the journey of my life. Every great thing that has ever happened to me happened from mistakes, like not doing it right, not thinking you're good enough, messing up stuff, making it's the best because then all that real stuff comes out of you. And I got that movie also from making a lot of mistakes in the casting. Like I just kept messing up the casting. So, but that made the director laugh as opposed to just trying to do everything right. So that was an amazing experience.
Like that. Um, when you're on stage or when you're putting something together for a film, there's always an element, kind of like what you're talking about, of sharing a piece of yourself. And some pieces that you share are a little more guttural or real, or potentially embarrassing, whether it's an aspect of your personality you didn't know you had or whatever. And kind of along those lines, I always kind of wonder, in situations for films like you did with Clay Pigeons, you had a very intimate scene in
Yeah.
that film. How do you get yourself into the headspace? Because that's late 90s. That's before, like, intimacy directors were a thing, right?
Yeah.
Or was there like an intimacy director on set to kind of get you to where you felt right in the moment and you were able to do what you needed to do? How do you get yourself into that space where you're sharing a lot more than what a lot of other people share in films?
You throw yourself off a cliff. That's what you throw yourself off a cliff. If you, I don't think I'm the greatest actress in the world, but I think I'm the most courageous. I think that there's nothing I probably wouldn't do for acting except hurt myself. But there's a trust with your director. There's a trust with the actors. We hope. Oftentimes, you're coming onto a set that has already been filming, and that could be a little bit jarring. Maybe I love the connection. I love the risk factors. I love that, going back to the things you can't do in life, you can do on film. If you are attracted to that and you want to express yourself, I think it's very easy. If it's not easy, you probably shouldn't do it. I think
Right.
the risk thing, like, okay, I'm just gonna scream at him or I'm just gonna make a fool out of myself. And of course, doing that with Joaquin Phoenix was a great joy. So it wasn't hard for me at all. I mean, they cleared the set and I was like, oh, it's okay, everybody can stay. Like, I just have a lot. I think I have a lot of courage, and that's all it was, really. I don't have any place that I want to hide myself in acting. Of course, there's limits and boundaries and different things that are not proper to do, but I love David Duckin and Joaquin and all that. A couple of times after that film, I did several other films where they were like, "Can you do what you did in Clay Pigeons?" And you literally, this happened to me where I would just be on set and there was no discussion, there was no connection with
Oh,
actors or the directors. And then, Then I left crying and I was like, okay, that's done. I'm not doing films like that anymore. But
Yeah.
with the clay play, that was all proper and really just a really trusting environment, safe environment. When you're safe, you can take a lot of more risks.
Right.
Yeah.
That definitely makes sense to me. Now I've had the joy of being able to speak to a fair number of actors over the years, and I really love hearing the different perspectives on things. And I know that several of them in the past have said to one effect or another that there's the cliche, there's no such thing as a small part, or whatever. But I always, in my mind, I'm looking at, but the differences between the sizes of parts. What would I enjoy? It's like, would I prefer being the person that's, I'm one of the leads, or one of the secondary characters, or would I still really have a lot of fun with just kind of a smaller role? And it just occurred to me and I wanted to ask you to see if you had the same kind of thought process. You would, with a smaller role, you would get to see a lot more of what was going on, because the focus isn't on you as much, and you can kind of see what everybody else is doing. And when I was looking at your part in The Wedding Planner, for example, I was
Yeah.
like, well, while that's not a huge role, that would be a perfect positioning to just kind of see everything that is occurring. Am I right in that thought process, or is it kind of different?
You are right, but it's also more nerve-wracking because you don't have a chance to build something and fall and fix it in the next scene. Like, you really have to nail it with a small scene. That's why the small characters are so important. Or the straight guy in a film, like allowing the other person to shine. It's tougher in a way because it's like, just being in a kitchen and not really able to cook. Like, you don't really have your say or hands in the pot. You're kind of just there, and you don't have that many chances really to like nail your, like, you've got to find a moment. It's harder. I find it harder to just be in one scene.
I kind
Like,
of wondered.
yeah, like that scene in The Wedding Planner, I had to cry on the cue of that
Right.
moment. That was very scary because you have there were thousands, there were so many extras, and then the camera's panning in, and you just have like that one chance to like say your line, or else you're gonna mess up 1,000 people, and they have to reset the shot and all this stuff. So that's like terrifying, as opposed to being in the whole movie where you get to just mess up stuff. But
So I've got this in my imagination. I'm putting myself in your position in that film, trying to at least. And it's like, imagine, okay, and the director's like, okay, we got the camera pointing this direction. We're going to pan over in this, and we're going to hit you with your mark. And I'm just thinking, it's like, he goes like, no, I need a minute more. I'm not there yet. Just kind of wait.
okay,
Did
I'm like this with my hands. I'm like, you better get this. Like, I'll put them under. I'm like, here it comes, here it comes. It's horrifying. I think you're gonna cost them like millions of dollars if you don't get that one tear in your eye in that one moment, on that one line, in that one rhythm. You got to do it. It's so much harder.
That is nuts. I couldn't, because I was trying to. Now, I hope this doesn't come across right. It's like, because I remembered your role uh, from Clay Pigeons and from Frogs and Snakes, because I'd seen those, and it's like, well, I'd seen The Wedding Planner. It's like, she was in that. Where? Right. Oh my. That just, my entire thought process, like, oh, that's rough.
It's rough. And you know what else is crazy about that is that you can do one scene as an actor in a movie that gets seen everywhere. And then you do like all these indie films and all these, amounts of work. And if it's not seen, if the film's not seen, you never get seen. So it's it's a very interesting thing.
Well,
One
and
line in a movie that gets seen it might be better. It might be better for your career to do that than do all these character roles and nobody sees them.
Well, it's kind of fun also to be that person eventually. That's like, oh, when you see this person, you think of the role from the previous films. That they're going to be that person for you forever. You've actually worked with somebody a couple of times that, for me, runs into that kind of spot. You've worked with Richard Edson a couple of times,
Yes,
and he's
yes.
I just like first thing I thought when I was like, oh yeah, I wonder if she just kind of jokingly asked him to park her car because he's always going to be the guy from Ferris Bueller for me forever and ever and ever.
Yep, yep.
Is
Yes,
is it fun to be able to work with the same people on multiple
yes,
projects?
yes, of
What
course.
what is your favorite part? What can you give me an example of somebody you've worked with on a couple of occasions where you just like, oh, we worked together on this other thing, but now that we've done that, I feel like I know you better and it made something else maybe easier or better.
Yeah, well, working with Richie for we did so many projects together, and he's a great example of even my little one was making a film, and he's in two of those short films too. It's just we laugh our sides off. We laugh so much. I think the theme of us talking is like mistakes and laughing and having fun and going deep and revealing the parts of yourself that you can't do in life. I think it's the same thing. And when you work with the same people over and over again, you're even more free with them and then more free with them. And that's the beauty of nobody goes to see a movie where somebody is shut down in it or they can't see themselves up on the big screen and
Right.
relate to characters. And I think you have to have a lot of courage and have fun mostly. Even if you're crying, it could be the most fun. And yelling at somebody or angry at somebody. In film, it's fun. In life, it's completely traumatic.
Right.
And in film, it's the most fun. The more you can do those things, the more fun you're going to have.
What's it like being able to share this with your son?
Oh my God, that is like if you have 7 more hours today, I could talk about that. That
Well,
blows my head. That blows my mind.
how
Um,
how did he come to you saying, "Mom, I want to make movies"?
he he had done a couple of things prior to this, but when he was 5 years old, the entire world shut down during the pandemic. And he woke me up one of those nights. It was about 2 months into the shutdowns. It was 4:30 in the morning, and he just started to shake me awake. And he said, "Mom, you're the best mom in the world, but you never got me a filmmaking class. I want to be a director. I want to spend my life making movies. I'm a filmmaker." He was a painter prior to that. He sold paintings since he was 4 years old. He had art gallery shows. So it wasn't like film. And a lot of music stuff, but I never thought of that for him really. And he just woke me up like in an epiphanal situation. About 6 a.m. that same morning, I called my friend, the director, Tony Kaye, one of the world's greatest directors and a good friend of mine. He directed American History X. And I said, it's the pandemic and my son's name is Josue. Gio wants telling me adamantly he wants to be a filmmaker, actor, director, writer, make movies. Can you maybe on Zoom teach him a filmmaking class? Like, a little thing. And he was like, sure, put him on right now. And Tony said to him, Gio, you want to be a filmmaker? And Gio said, yes. And he goes, okay, go watch Lawrence of Arabia and call me back after. That's your first assignment. So
Nice.
to not to get into it too much, but literally about a week later, my son made a movie. And so from there, he's been acting. My agent took him on and he works a lot, acting, writing, directing, and musically composing.
That's so much fun.
Yeah, so that's how that happened. Just a basic shakedown.
Well,
Get up, you got to do this for me. I know I'm this, and you got to help me.
I feel like you couldn't have picked a better first step. I love American History X, even if there maybe was some disagreement between Edward Norton
Yeah,
and uh, and him about how things go. I think maybe that made it better because it just that was a gritty, raw film. I love that film.
yeah,
It's one of those great examples of here's an excellent film that I don't want to watch very often. Once or twice is just fine.
yeah.
uh, so okay, so let's talk about current events just for a minute. Obviously, we've gotten mostly past the pandemic stuff. I mean, it's still aspects of it, kind of lingering around, and now that we're past that, we have to have something else causing problems for the people that make the things that we love, and that being the SAG-AFTRA, the strike that's going on. What do you have any thoughts on this? What do you think it's going to take for the studios, the people that are making the films, to come to an understanding from the perspective of the writers and the actors?
I don't know what it's going to take on their part. There has to be some kind of mediation or agreement. I stand obviously with the actors and the writers, full throttle.
Same.
Um, we are the voice and the breath of every movie. I mean, there's nothing without, obviously, first the writer. That is step one. There's no vision, there's no nothing. That's like building a house with no foundation whatsoever, building a house on sand that just gets blown away by the wind. I mean, these are people, we artists, to be honored, cherished, loved, supported. And unfortunately, that comes through funding and financing. That's how the earth works.
Right.
So without that, I don't see how anybody can do their work. And there has to be some kind of, it's so divided right now. There has to be some kind of unity and humanity and standing together on this and working to create better films and a better life for everybody. It's no one part can work without the other. It's like
Right.
cutting an arm off and thinking that. So I don't, there just has to be a mutual respect. And there's nothing wrong with saying that or wanting that. Both sides, and maybe it's going to take, I don't know, somebody coming into it, or something has to break so we can all go on and make better films and do our work.
Right. I have to wonder if some of this was caused by the shift in the combination of consumption patterns of the media that we watch, as well as the the normal kind of large company response to something that's new. It's like, oh, well, if it's new, then we have to own it. And there can't be anybody else, or we have to have our own very specific brand of it. That's why we have 300,000 different streaming platforms and, all these different things. And in a way, it's like, wow, there's a lot of choice. But the problem is there's a lot of choice. And that I feel like that creates a change in the mindset of the people that are in charge of everything, that they feel a lack of control and then want to put that control where they feel that they've got it, and then it just hurts everything.
I think it's a lack of humanity. I think it's become, I don't want to say, but it's very greedy, and it's it's very sad. It's very sad because I think, especially with everything that everyone has been through, films can be a very uniting thing
Right.
when they're just great human stories being told, not revamped and like, there's so many people with so much more to say maybe than ever before on the planet, and there's so much darkness. And when people go to the cinema or they stream something, some of them want to leave their life and just get the load off and the burden off and see a great story, a rags to riches story, a classical Hollywood thing, or whatever it is. They just want to see a beautiful thing.
Right.
And this is just hurting everybody. That's all I think.
I agree.
And hopefully great things will come out of it. But it goes back to great stories. That's what this was built on. And it's become this whole other strange industrial complex of, I get that because obviously you need money to make films, but there just has to be some kind of balance
Yeah.
betwixt
Yeah.
everything. I think you probably agree with that.
Oh,
At
definitely.
the end of the
Definitely.
day, people want to see great stories and
Yeah.
they want to be entertained and they want to be, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So there has to
I
be.
talking about a great story that focuses on hurting people in a fun way. You've got a film coming out here. Like
Oh yeah,
that's the way that really took something that we don't want to talk about anymore, and then maybe take it somewhere fun. Um, you get to play like an ex-assassin.
yes, that was
How much fun is that? Tell me, tell me, tell me, tell me.
beyond fun. That was I actually got the job this same day that I went to go film. I had 1 hour to get to set, and it was just the whole thing was just so much fun to film out on the open seas in California. We filmed off the coast of Marina del Rey, working with Jason Patrick and playing these crazy killers. And I don't want to give anything away, was absolutely amazing.
It looks like it's a lot of fun. I mean, till death do us part, the name of it. I feel like I skipped over that for a moment, but it looks like it has a really fun cast and it has this kind of a campy, almost 70s violence feel to it. Um, I mean, just the fact that it's like Orlando Jones is in it,
Yes,
that just makes me smile in and of itself.
I
Uh,
know.
he has kind of a way of making everything kind of fun. What was your what was your favorite part of this particular production? Was it reading the script? Was it a specific location you got to film on? Was it a specific interaction?
It was being on the boat with Jason and Natalie and Sedarius Green. It was being on that yacht was, I mean, you can feel a lot of that in the film. The yacht was, the waters were so crazy rocky. There were dolphins out there. And it was, I'll let you in on one secret. It was very difficult to film because the boat and the cameras and the crew and everything, nobody could stabilize themselves. Completely hilarious. We couldn't get any of the scenes done. We had to even shift to different parts of the boat because being on the bow of the boat was too windy and it was too rocky, and the dolphins were coming over and spitting on the side of the scene. And we had to transfer the scene inside, outside. Jason sometimes he had to put in one scene he had to put a platter of food down. It was shark, and he couldn't get it down on the table properly because the boat was rocking. So people were getting seasick. They got thrown over the side. The sound guy got thrown over the side of the boat. It was hilarious. It was so much fun. It was so amazing.
Oh man, that just sounds like it's a lot of fun. And from what I've seen of it so far, I haven't seen it yet. Now what I've seen now I have to see it because it just looks like too much fun. Looks like there had to have been at least a little bit of prep work in terms of some combat training too. Uh,
Oh,
I saw what looked like a very solid sidekick that was landed by one of the individuals. Like, oh, I don't ever remember seeing them do anything combat related. That looks much too crisp to be to
yeah.
not have been a little bit of training. Um, what do you think it? Did you get to partake in any like special training for that? It's like, oh, we're going to be on a boat. You need to learn how to do X or whatever.
I wish I did, but Natalie Byrne is the actress, and she's phenomenal
Yeah.
at martial arts. She's extraordinary. And she came from being a ballerina in the Ukraine. So she has the incredible skills to take on every man in the film.
That explains it. I was going to say, it's like, wow, that if this was just like a 6 month training thing, whoever trained them did really good. It's like, no, okay, no. So she's like a martial arts.
Oh, she's like incredibly skillful and amazing. She's she's a dancer and a martial artist, and she does a lot of action films. And I wish I could do that. It inspired me to train more now and get back into the gym and start boxing again,
Oh,
because I've always been athletic, but not for the last year. And now I'm going back to the gym and training because of this movie, but I don't have those combat scenes. I play Jason Patrick's wife,
right.
crazy wife.
Well, that's the fun
I'm
part,
part
though.
of this crazy couple. Yeah.
Being the crazy person gives you license to just have fun with
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Well, he is. I'm more like his rock, but we're a crazy couple that has done a lot of things in our life, which
Mm.
later gets revealed.
That's going to be so much fun. I'm definitely going to have to take a look at that. That's going to be great. Now, if you're going to go into some martial arts, I definitely go that mixed martial arts technique. Get a little jujitsu in there, maybe some kenpo. You'll be ready in no
Yeah,
time to be a
I'm
martial
ready to
arts
get the
superstar.
muscles back up after this film. I'm going to do boxing and some ballet.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have one question. Actually, two questions. I take that back. I lied. I always have two questions that I ask everybody. One of them has to do with kind of the nature of our podcast. We tend to talk a lot about the intersection of comic books and film and television. So I always start with, were you ever a comic book fan yourself?
I was not the biggest comic book fan. I'm more a fairy tale fan.
Well, there's
I
some
love
very cool.
picture books and old ancient fairy tales. That was like those were my comic books. Like finding like ancient books with the designs and the drawings in them.
I like it. I like it.
Maybe
Well,
it was dark comedy.
yeah. Well, if you had a chance, let's say I don't know, Marvel Studios or Warner Brothers came up to you and there's going to be the next big comic book film. If you could choose any character that you were aware of that you could play, what would it be and why?
Well, I've always loved, I know they've made it already, but I've always loved Beauty and the Beast and the old French fairy tales. Or maybe even something like Joan of Arc or some, I that's not comical, but something European, some
Oh,
kind of, yeah, it could be comical.
well, I mean, they have variations that go take these original stories and just kind of riff off of them in the comic. There's a lot of examples of things like that, especially on some of the smaller publishers. But well, I was just going to say, just with the look that you had, it's like I would say that you have a very ask a comic book person what this means, but I'd say you have a very Jean Grey look to you in terms of X-Men. They're going to be redoing the whole X-Men franchise, the mutants and everything coming up. And just, just from a physicality side of things, like, oh, Hellfire Club, Black Queen version of Jean Grey, I could definitely see you pulling that off 100%.
Okay, thank you. That seems like a really big compliment. And I'm going to be studying the Jean Grey comics. And this is a very thought-provoking question, by the way. I'm really going to look into this because it's pulling up my love of these kind of comic book characters or like ancient fairy tales. I lost a little bit of that part of myself because I've been acting a lot, but I also love to write
Right.
these characters and fantasy.
These stories are all they're just based on older myths and fairy
Right.
tales, and they're just
That's
extrapolations of the things that we love.
that's what's coming to me. It's like these are comic books are built on ancient stories, really, or just the storytellings of those old fairy tale novels and things like that,
All
or
right.
like Arabian Nights. And
Well, let's end strong. I already know your answer. Well, part one of the answer to the last question I'm going to ask you. This is a put yourself in the situation sort of a thing that I've done. Um, Imagine that you're having breakfast. You run across a lamp, a genie lamp, and you rub it, but the genie that pops out has been in Los Angeles for way too long. So his wish granting capabilities are extraordinarily limited. He says, "I can give you three wishes, but the wishes are all kind of the same. I can allow you to work with three different individuals that you've always wanted to work with. Who would they be and why?
Tino, Gary, Gary Oldman.
Oh,
My God, Joaquin again.
uh, there
That's
you
if I have to think about this, I might come up with different answers, but those definitely. Oh, they're all men too.
go. Well,
But
it's one of those things. There's so many good people. There's no wrong answer that you can really get.
there's no wrong answer.
It's just the people that can kind of touch you. And I appreciate the fact that you've allowed us the moment to just take a little glimpse into your life and your history to be here with us today. And I really hope Till Death Do Us Part does fantastic, and that you come back and talk to us again when you have another project that's in the works. We would love to hear more about the things that are coming up in your life. Now,
I would love to. I
and
have some good things in the works.
excellent. Well, if we want to keep our eye on that, what are the best social media locations that we can go to find out what's going on with you in your day-to-day life?
Just Nicole Arlyn at Instagram, Nicole Arlyn on Facebook, and I'm building a couple of other things too, which I'll connect to those platforms.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for your time, and
Yeah, this was amazing.
I can't wait to see what else is coming out in the future.
Yep, amazing day. Bye.
All right, they'll bleed out there. We'll be good.
All right. Wow, you asked such incredible questions.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope to ask questions that are interesting, not just to me and the people listening, but hopefully interesting to you.